Hello Internet and welcome to the show Do You Physics? Today we're going to be discussing cutting down 10,000 pounds in each limb, fantasies for the closeted narcissist, and treatment for the telepathic, psychopathic, emotionally unstable teenagers. I'm HamsterBomb, joined today by Kimothy, and of course we're talking about giant mechs.
Of course!
Yeah, this one was actually your big idea. Okay, how about this? The past Do You Physics episodes and most of the other ones I've got planned are just things that I ask myself and I just really need to know. And this was the big thing Kim threw in. She was like, I need to know, can these giant robots that we see in so many science fiction games, TV shows, can they happen?
You're so close. You're so close!
Kim just wanted to jump already to the conclusion. She couldn't even take it. We're going to go through a bunch of different series and try and discuss them. Can you throw some out, Kim, that you were...
So, I'm more familiar with the animes, but of course we also have a lot of popular video games, which I think help us a lot more.
Okay, so throw some out here. Just throw as many as you can.
So we have, like, Metal Gear, Armored Core, Battletech,
okay.
Gundam. Let's see here.
You said Voltron.
Multiple
pieces.
Evangelion.
Gurren Lagann. All right, we're not going to do the drills and the power of spiral energy and all that.
Robotech, Patlabor, Titanfall.
All right, and we have a Pacific Rim. Which is insane compared to the others when you know how big they really are.
Other ones like the stuff on Alien and Avatar.
I wanted to say that first so we can draw a little line in the sand. Obviously on this show we try and stay as realistic as possible, and we're trying to figure out, can these things really happen? So when it comes to giant robots, there's a lot of things that we need to identify as, okay, if they say in the show or the game it's being powered or controlled by magic, sorry,
it's alien technology.
Right, like I mentioned, Gurren Lagann, it's powered by spiral energy, and they just kind of joke about what that is, and it's fake, right? It's just made up words just so that they can animate and do whatever they want.
And that's kind of what I did when I was starting this process, is I was like, oh my gosh, I know so many mechs. How do I personally categorize each mech?
You can organize them. So if we go to Metal Gear Rex, now you're looking at one that was made so that it took out as much magic as possible and tried to make something real and see what would happen in the real world if that existed.
I don't know what it's actually powered by.
True, and it would need a tremendous amount of energy. We'll get into that stuff later, but line in the sand first. I am sketching that sucker out.
Line in the sand, like I made a list of my magic mechs that I just know of off of the bat.
Like I would even consider, if we stuck in Metal Gear, I would consider Sahelanthropus a magic one.
Yeah,
because in the game they even say that it couldn't work, it couldn't stand up, and the engineer is even confused how it's even operating, and it's because apparently a telepath needs to fly next to it and just actually control it, because the darn thing wouldn't really stand up and walk around, which is another tremendous problem. There's so many huge problems for this, though. To keep you, I guess, listening, Kim says we're close. Which is good, I guess. I don't know if that's good. That's just a
I guess
thing.
I wanted to go, like, what my different types, in case I bring it up again throughout the...
Yeah, go ahead.
So I have different types. I have categorized giant mechs by, like, single pilot units.
Right. There's, like, the human-shaped ones.
And then we have multi-piece, multi-pilot units.
Like Voltron.
Voltron, Zords, Gurren Lagann, Jaegers.
You mean Zoids?
Zords.
I don't even know what that is.
The Zord! Power Rangers!
I never watched Power Rangers. I'm sorry. Great.
And then I had my magic mechs, which we're not even going to talk about today, but...
Right. I mean, we basically identified them to push them out now. Like, that's why we said that.
Right.
So, goodbye. Though, I know one you're about to get to, because I mentioned, like, Metal Gear Rex is a realistic one that we could talk about. And Sahelanthropus is too far gone. In the middle, we had Metal Gear Ray, which is another idea that you're going to speak about.
Which is my next category, which is our biomechs.
Biomechs. That's frighteningly possible.
Right. And which brings us to, like, the Avas and Evangelion and
really,
geckos,
they did that too. Yes,
and
geckos
Ray.
and Metal Gear 4 and Ray. Yeah.
And then we also have our other ones that are more tank-like quadrupeds, tanks, like Zoids, Gun Tank, Shagahad, Bakus, Legao.
And real things.
And real tanks!
And real things. No, like, there was some real ones.
We'll get to it. And then the last thing I have, which I think is actually really important of what we're about to talk about, are giant mechs that are mainly piloted by computer AI systems. So
more feasible than putting a human inside, because that actually screws it up.
Arsenal Gear and Peace Walker.
True. Arsenal Gear, yes, was I don't know. I wouldn't really consider that like a Okay, how about this? Arsenal Gear remotely controlled an army of Metal Gear Rays, which that is okay, because Arsenal Gear is more of the giant AI. Right. That is an indestructible ship, but whatever.
Yes.
I know each series, like, I'm trying to avoid digging into rabbit holes in each one to try and clarify the science of it, but this time we're not staying in, like, the Pokeball episode. We're not staying in one universe.
We're not just talking about one specific thing. Now, if you guys want to, we can just talk about one specific thing at some point if you guys are like, hey, what about this?
But I was, like, even unsure when we were writing this down, like, what can we really talk about? Because it seems so unfeasible that we can't even do this.
Humanity wants it so badly.
Clearly, humans need giant robots in their life. They need to, have a fantasy for their closeted narcissists. Which,
right.
Actually, this is probably a good point to even talk about what that idea was. I'm assuming because you put that one in there. I'm pretty sure what we're putting that in is talking about, for whatever reason, people through science fiction have decided that if you're going to build a giant robot to fight and do war or whatever it is, it's got to be shaped like a human.
Right.
As if for some reason a human shape is not only efficient, but perfect and ideal for a fighting robot. Like, I'm sorry, we can only see, for one, within like a 60-degree radius. That's where our peripheral vision takes over and we can't see anything behind us. I'm sorry, but that's pretty bad.
But it's not really just about the vision that we looked at here.
I'm going head to toe here. There's so many issues.
But that's not the big thing.
Heavy.
That's not the big thing.
There's so many problems. What is the big thing?
Okay, so BBC posted an article in 2006 about giant mechs. So I'm going to read this quote.
Are we still talking about the human shape?
Yes, this is just
I'll make sure you're not tangenting me.
Right, I'm trying not to.
Okay.
One of the reasons why the human form is so appealing as a vehicle is that it is remarkably ergonomic design.
Okay.
The human anatomy is incredibly efficient for clambering over rocks. It says
Clamoring, okay.
Clambering over rocks and walking along roads, explains Rob Buckingham. Good job for you. Just looking at the soldier who is able to carry several times his own body weight over any terrain. However, the trade-off is that walking on two legs requires significant dexterity and stability can be quite hard to control.
Definitely. There was actually a section in what I was reading, if I can pull something up. This I may refer back to this later. My link comes from space.com in an article titled "How Possible Are the Giant Robots in Pacific Rim?" which was just perfect considering how ludicrous this is. But they actually were speaking about how difficult it really is in order to make something just walk on two legs. I mean, it's incredibly difficult already. So basically, the idea is really simple. We our 2-year-old humans can walk around and they understand it, but when you stop and try and explain to somebody what is walking, how do you walk, how do you tell a robot to walk, it's extremely hard.
No one can scientifically... You can't just walk up onto somebody on the street and tell me, how do you walk?
It's primarily muscle memory, referencing in real time your balance. So there's a gyroscopic sensation that the robot would need to have in order to reference. Its vision's also involved, because if you're walking up a hill, that is going to change what the gyroscope does. If there's a rock in the way and you have to step on that, if there's stairs, I mean...
But even as I'm reading, having a gyroscope in there makes it almost impossible for you to even walk more casually, because the effort of walking is unstable. So you can't walk if you have complete stability, if that makes sense. So I actually had some more information from that BBC article.
Sure.
That a professor suggests a combination of, I can't say his name, so I'm just not even going to say it.
Let me try.
Okay, right there.
Yeah, I got it right. You can quote me on that.
I think his first name is Sethu.
Just say Sethu then. Go ahead.
Suggests a combination of teleoperations, like those used on the power loader in the film Aliens, with the automatic system reacting to the pilot's intentions. There will be a high level of intentions coming from the operator, but a lot of low-level control will be built into the platform, such as maintaining stability when walking. So we're not having to think about the smaller things that we would normally think about while we're walking, but we can at least think about just moving forward and that process of walking.
Right. It's because a different part of the brain does that. It's not the conscious part that's, it's like you don't have to think, breathe, heartbeat, blink, breathe,
Right.
heartbeat. But that stuff it's not cluttering if our conscious thinking mind that's elsewhere. It's happening, but it's elsewhere. Because we'd be bored to death.
And that's what we're saying. We need to make two separate units that would control one or the other, where the human could actually control the very intentional, high-level parts of the machine, and then the computer could handle all of the other lower-level maintenance.
And that's probably what we're going to be talking about a lot of in this, is figuring out what do we actually want from the pilot to do, and what do we want this thing to be able to do by itself in that subconscious mind, right? Because it's going to have some sort of AI to do that. So anyway, I've got my quote going from space.com after basically they were just talking about what I was saying, that predicament of how we can't really describe how we walk. So, quote, in the past several years, there have been several robots capable of walking over certain types of terrain. However, none of them approach the grace or functionality of their mobile biological counterparts. Walking, running, and other skills that humans and animals don't even consciously think about are some of the most difficult to replicate in robots. These are advanced abilities that all animals have that are way below our conscious understanding and way above our ability to consciously understand. So far was their own small
even
quote.
If you think about how your foot reacts to the ground while you're walking, if
you
it's
need to be able to feel it. You need to feel the
it's
pressure,
this uneven
the
surface most of the time.
Think of how many bones are just in your
ankle.
ankle.
That causes you to, stay stable within this unstable environment. And we are not to that point with our technology.
To detect it, we need a ton of different bones in our ankles to make very detailed joints, to feel very subtle changes in direction. Otherwise, we'd be falling over all the time.
And that's a big thing with mechs, are just the joints and the weight of the joints.
We'll get there later, because it's going to multiply out so much. Obviously, they're heavy. They're way heavier than you think they are. And then when you put all of that weight standing, like how I would assume, designed by a complete narcissist who thinks that a human body shape is good for a giant robot, oh heck no. It's horrible. Because now you're stacking like a Jenga pile all of this weight on top of because we're just talking about the feet. How they need to be able to platform and hold themselves.
And that gives you that stiletto effect where you're slowly going to start sinking against the ground in certain areas depending on where you step.
Right. Leaving massive footprints.
But the point of having the human form is to help us to better be able to manipulate and move that robot without having to think about it as much. So I'm thinking a lot with the teleoperations as the one scientist suggested, where you're thinking about... See, it's going to be a lot quicker if you just think, do this motion, rather than, I need to do this motion, which trigger do I need to move, and then it actually moves that motion. It causes a lot of slowdown.
Delay. We'll talk about control later, but just in terms of like the feet and walking, I really like the solution that Metal Gear Rex came up with, which basically, aside from there being main... just in case you don't know what this is, just so you can get like a visual in your head. There are the legs are kind of shaped kind of weird. They're backwards like a werewolf chicken kind of funky shape, but at the bottoms they are flat. And in front of those there's giant, I would say like piston spears. I would say like if you looked at it, you would kind of call them toes, right? But these things will every step stab into the ground and kind of brace and hold where it is. So it doesn't really need to balance itself.
Right.
Because it's able, while it's walking, to kind of like claw and walk around and drag.
But that also drastically slows down the speed that it can create.
That thing's not meant to go fast. It's meant to walk around and launch a nuclear missile from any terrain. That's what it was built for. This is not built to, like a Gundam, to run around like a person and punch and kick people and pull out beam swords. Which, maybe another episode later. Not now. We are not getting into beam swords. But also, Rex also has additional pieces that come out of the back of the thigh that can actually cause it to balance itself better. Because if it was just standing, it would topple over. But, assuming that you don't really... If you have those stab things that stick in the ground, while it's walking, at least that would help you. But if it's trying to stand still, it can basically make a table. Right, it will have 4 legs on the ground because coming out of the thigh, it can plant itself backwards.
Now, I don't know if this would... it was just something I was thinking of as you were describing how Rex stays stabilized, is in the show Code Geass, a lot of the actual mechs have tires that plop down on the bottom behind the feet to help propel them forward faster. Would something like that help Rex to move faster?
That would take a tremendous amount of energy to spin those wheels. Mm-hmm. If anything, I would think that the weight of... Well, for one, they'd pop. They'd have to be treads. But the weight of them, I feel like would just slide backwards because no matter how much energy you're trying to whip around there to get them to spin, they're gonna fall. I mean, it's nice to draw it and pretend it'll happen and animate it and show it happening, but that doesn't mean that it could ever happen.
Right.
So, I mean, I'm not so sure about the... Okay, here. If the legs never moved and there were wheels on the bottom, sure. Just never take it off of the airport air track because it can't go on any other terrain.
The point of it being bipedal is, though, that you can go on all terrain. That's the whole big advantage to that issue.
Yeah, that thing would never be able to leave the air track.
And one of the other big requirements I was trying to get into earlier about all of the joints that you have to have and how much energy and force you have to move each joint.
Yeah.
Because we had some research here, I believe it's from that same BBC article. There has been research into pneumatic muscles.
Yeah.
But it required
that's so
2
weird.
to open and close at every joint. You can build something that has up to 5 joints using these pneumatic muscles, says Sethu. But the moment you try to build a bipedal system out of that, it gets out of control in terms of electronics, routing, and the wiring.
I wonder why.
So, with that, essentially what that is you're putting a motor system at every single joint, which also creates...
Oh, no. Yeah, you kind of would need to.
Significant amount of weight.
Yeah, not just the weight. I mean,
think about power that muscle.
Or because of the weight, you needed more energy. And to get more energy, you added more weight. It's not solving the problem.
Right.
It's making it worse. So these things are...
Which is why the human muscles in general would be the better alternative.
Right, they're lightweight and they can suddenly take a ton of force. But I mean, you build something like a gecko, which
I think
let me explain what it is
the
first.
Most practical
we gotta explain
thing.
what these are. So I would say like somewhere between 15 to 20 feet. How tall do you think they are?
They're not nearly as tall as say what we're talking about in
very
the Jaegers
small.
and things like that. So
not even if you stood a school bus up, it's not even that tall. I don't think.
It's pretty tall.
Yeah, well, I don't even think they're that tall.
I'd say 15.
So
like you're saying.
Some parts of it look like it's clearly a robot. And it's got computer systems inside of it, and it's doing all sorts of crazy things. It's completely autopilot, which makes more... Well, we'll get later, makes more sense than a human. But it's notable because of its legs, which I would say are about 10 feet tall each. And they are very strange, muscular, cybernetic limbs. And...
Well, they're biogenetically engineered muscles.
I find that's just so weird and gross. But because there's bits where you see them cut up later and they bleed. And it's weird. because that's how they operate.
I mean, we're already really big on building our own organs and stuff like that. That is not that far out of reach.
I mean, you gotta accept that the human form isn't special. That's one thing for the shape of it. I mean, this is just biology and evolution combining to create this shape that we happen to be in right now. We could have been in the shape of birds and intelligent, who knows. But you get to the point where you go, okay, well, nature decided this was the optimum way to do it. And the nervous system and these muscles are basically just an electrical series of circuits that are triggering things on impulses to make them work.
Right.
And that's exactly what a giant robot is. But the robot is heavier. So nature already did it better, and we can't even get to this point.
I don't remember if it was that article I was reading about, what is that, space.com?
Yeah.
Or if it was on the BBC article, but they were talking about we had to make it to where we had a tissue-like form and we could fire off electrical currents just depending on where we needed those muscles. So we're building a giant human.
They wouldn't, if we had giant robots, I would assume, the first thing I would think is they really wouldn't be
purely robotic,
like mechanical,
right?
as you would expect it. It would look more like a giant person if you needed to keep that shape, which I think is stupid. But
there are so many articles saying that shape is the most useful for us because
I would call those
versatile.
people closeted narcissists because no, they're not helpful. Like, I didn't even keep going down my list. Like, you come up here, we can't see in all directions, which robots, you easily could do that.
Well,
we're also limited to the visual spectrum if I'm just on the eyes. You can see so much more than that if you were able to see infrared or X-rays.
I'm not saying that you're keeping all of your cognitive and motor functions that you have up here. I'm saying just your body from your chest down is what we need.
No, not even. Can I keep going? Because
no,
we humans suck. Here, the neck. I'm gonna keep going. I can't rotate this all the way around.
That's why I just said we're starting it here and down.
Let me keep going. Let's go to the arm. I can't bend my elbow in the other direction. My thumb only goes in. I only have so many fingers. I can't extend my fingers. Like, this is not helpful. If I lose one...
What you're doing is you're taking the human form and you're building off from that. So you see you have a joint here. How can we make that joint more useful in our human body? How can we make it go in a different direction or extend in a different way?
You'd tear it or break my bones.
Exactly. So we need to figure out with the robot, how can we change this?
No, what you need to do is how do you better design what bones go where and where would muscles be in order to make a better shape? Make an arm that could rotate its shoulder around the torso, or make an elbow that can completely rotate 360 degrees and bend in any direction. You can build these. I mean, think about action figures, right? Really detailed figures that people build, right? They start making really nice joints that can go anywhere, but they'll block them off at the elbows so you don't make poses that look completely inhuman, right? You don't bend the fingers all the way back to touch the back of the palm, because that's inhuman.
It was like what I was saying earlier, though. We have the human form so that way we can control it easier. It's more, it takes a longer process of us thinking when it's not in something that's so familiar to us.
My point is, we could build something much more efficient than a human body. Because if you were able to move your limbs in any direction, extend things, people would be able to run much faster, jump much higher, perform incredible feats of strength. This shape is efficient, but it is limiting. That's what I'm trying to say. So there's much more that we would need to keep an open mind for when you want to design something that's very large, that needs to carry a ton of weight, because the human shape is not the best way to do it because of its limitations.
Okay.
I
can agree with that.
That's what I'm trying to say. This shape is dumb.
But I still love Gundams. Don't get me wrong. I know it's dumb.
You know, maybe that's what this is about.
I just love it.
Maybe this was, I already knew going into this. This was just an episode Kim wanted to talk about Gundams.
But really, I wasn't even going to talk about Gundams at all, because they don't physics ever. So, they don't.
No. And we're just going to talk about why they don't. Can I throw some things out that Gundams do, in case people are not familiar, that just blow my mind? Based on which series they... What?
How do you not... I know people who are unfamiliar. I know.
There's always people who don't know.
I know.
You got... Kim, I never watched any Gundam until she made me.
I'm judging you right now.
And I'm gonna explain people like me that I am not judging. Noted. Okay. Gundams, based on which series you're watching, because it's kind of like Final Fantasy, where each one kind of doesn't have anything to do with each other, and they're using the same kind of stuff. Is that acceptable? Okay. They pilot them in different ways, and we'll get into how that works later, so I'm going to throw that out the window, but for the most part, you're basically looking at a giant, humanoid-shaped robot. About how tall are these things? Like half a skyscraper? These things are super tall. Like how many stories?
62 meters?
They kind of change in each series, too, so I don't...
For the most part, they stay about that height, though.
Big human-shaped fighting robots. I'm sure you know what a Gundam looks like. But there's the fact that they fight free-flowing in space. They can fight in outer orbit. They can fight and not burn up while entering orbit of any other planet, which means that it's basically a space shuttle that holds a tremendous amount of energy.
They never go any farther outside of the Earth's
What I do like, though, is
area.
some have limited energy and they need to go back and refill immediately because they can't possibly keep moving like that. And it's because of this tremendous energy they need to hold. Actually, it's just, writing conveniences, and they want to stop people from using They want to cause problems because they're in a giant fighting robot. Let's keep going.
Okay, I'll let you continue.
Now that they're on land, they can not only fight anywhere on the land, as in the deserts, super hot or super cold, they can also go deep underwater and fight in the same speed as if they were anywhere else anywhere.
I think my biggest complaint about Gundams is the head.
Because it's human-shaped and it's stupid.
Right.
The
Because
pilot,
once you take off the
pilot
head...
goes in the chest, right?
Right. Once you take
In
off
all
the
of them?
head, yes.
Okay.
Once you take off the head, the pilot has to open the cockpit to see around.
Okay, well, that,
The only issue where I do not see that happening is
So it's
actually...
the computer system. It's the cameras, right?
Right. The only series where I don't see that happening is G Gundam. They have a 360 camera inside the cockpit.
Which makes more sense. And even though that's a totally ridiculous series.
I hate that the more and more I researched, G Gundam seemed to be the more practical way.
It's because it's not a favorite of hers. But one thing, now that you mentioned that one, the control, how they control those giant robots was, I think, the most interesting. They basically... Now, it was kind of perverted, the way that they had an animation.
Perverted.
But let's get by that. They basically put on a skin-tight, black, inky, goopy, rubber-like suit. And it was kind of like motion capture for video games, except it was instantly performing the way that it needed to with a human, right? Which, once again, you're assuming the human form is helpful. And
but that's also what the Jaegers do, is what I believe.
Yeah, but what about this?
Kind of
Here, my point, how about this? Say you, for whatever reason, you have two Gundams and they're in like a Rock'em Sock'em robot fight,
yes,
right?
G Gundam.
Sure. And one of them is pinned down on its chest and the other one is holding it down on its back, right? Like a wrestling move. Mm-hmm. Now, since it's being piloted in this way, where the pilot is in this rubber suit, he's limited by his own physiology. He cannot rotate his elbow all the way around and punch the guy, basically making that the front of his chest instead. He couldn't just rotate his arms backwards and start punching and attacking or throw this guy off of him. Because if you were pinned down on your back, think about how much of a big difference that is for you as a human to throw that person off. On your chest, totally different. Right? Because you're the way you're built. And since they were designed to be limited like that, now you're stuck.
Well, even one of the stupider things about G Gundam is that you do feel pain.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
It gets worse.
I couldn't bear enough of it to watch. I'm sorry.
I just watched an episode here and there for giggles. I have the whole set. Don't know why.
For anyone who's curious, because I know we're mentioning it enough, it's basically known as the super racist Gundam, where they basically have like
not just Gundam, the super racist anime.
The super racist anime, yeah, it's pretty big, where they basically stereotyped every single country and made a giant fighting robot that was just super offensive for them. What was it? Holland had a giant windmill. My gosh, there's
There's also a horse one. Like, a horse can pilot one of these Gundams.
Wasn't it like Zeus?
Yes, it was Zeus.
Oh yeah, the horse actually piloted it.
He actually gets in the cockpit.
Okay, we need to stop.
We are getting really off topic.
So anyway, those controls are more...
Actually, what's ideal for the form?
If you wanted to use that form, yes. Which I have made a ton of red flags already saying it's stupid and it's useless and it's a waste of your money and time, but whatever. That is helpful, yes. Can we move on to more feasible things? How about this? We haven't even talked about...
What actually has existed?
Let's save that for last. Because there's a few other really big limitations for how these things won't happen. Right?
This Probably is the biggest debate I think we've had.
Yeah, I know you're saying like it'll totally happen. I'm like, heck no.
It'll totally happen, especially if we make it like geckos.
Especially if we have more movies like Pacific Rim, and if we get like a new Godzilla and it's against like a Mecha Godzilla, things like that just get into the public's mind. That's what makes this stuff happen. You know why Japan has giant, real-life-size Gundam statues that light up? You know? Do you know why? It's because it's a part of their culture and they watch this all the time, right?
It's all Japan. Like, every single time I was trying to research more on these giant mechs, and they're
it's
like,
mostly
well,
Japan.
Of course Japan did this first. And I actually have
Japan.
a closing statement with Japan as well about how close we are actually getting to more military use with these kinds of things.
Sure. I just kind of glanced in here and saw another giant robot series we didn't even mention yet, which was Transformers.
Yeah, I wrote it down, and then I was like, well, is it piloted by computers, or is it one of those magic mech things?
Yeah, well, how about this?
Technology.
Think about this. If you want to take the form of a fire truck, you basically need to either know some extreme yoga, or... like so far in-depth yoga that you are giving Samus Aran tips on how to get into the morph ball. There's no way. So it's a computer system that can somehow change into that, which
it's an alien thing, whatever.
Okay,
I put it under magic mechs. I'm not listening.
No, that's an AI, right? And that's another form of control. So I guess before we move on, like that is another way you can control them if you just had a computer system that just controlled the whole darn thing and you're good.
Well, that's what we're talking about. That's why I said, like, Peace Walker would be ideal.
Yes, Peace Walker.
For AIs.
Can I explain?
Yes.
Great. I gotta catch everybody. I gotta catch everybody up to speed on everything. So briefly, Peace Walker is a Metal Gear game where basically they created two different kinds of AI brains to work together, and it works similar to how we would expect other living things to work. There's a mammal pod and a reptile pod. The reptile pod is an AI pod specifically for fulfilling functions like movement. Because it's going to think more like that reptilian creature, like move this limb, do this, correct for this because you're tipping, do this, move this, do this, and moving in better positions. The mammal pod was an AI pod made more for decision making because the Peace Walker was a nuclear deterrent, and if it sensed a threat, it would need to detect the threat, determine if it needs to counterattack, and so thinking, okay? So they're both thinking, but they're totally different kinds of thinking, and you need both. If you just have one, the movement, which is probably the big thing everyone was just thinking of, sure, it can walk around and you can show it at your science fair and win first place, but that's about all you can do.
Right.
You need a mammal pod, air quotes, one where it can actually perform. So if it's in a fight, it can strategically figure out what it needs to do.
Which is way more helpful for military use than using
totally.
like the reptile that's just gonna
totally, yeah. I mean, we
dilly-dally about its business.
Exactly. So
that's the one I'm really like in love with the more that we're talking about it.
What's that?
The Peace Walker,
Peace Walker.
Having those two separate brains working together.
It also primarily walked on four legs, or it walked on four legs to move on any terrain, and in the game you can even see it moving up mountains, which would make sense. I mean, once you got that kind of leverage, it was nice. And then when it wanted to go into close combat, it actually like flipped like a transformer and moved into bipedal. And had the ability to launch.
That seems a little bit more difficult to me.
That does sound more difficult, but it also, and several of these, if we're talking Metal Gear, have the ability to use a railgun to launch a nuclear weapon.
The magic part.
No! Unfortunately, no.
See, the thing is, like, the walking quadrupeds, we actually do have robots that already do things like that.
Mm-hmm. No, they're not.
Small.
They're not launching nukes. And
they're not large.
Right,
they're small. Like, you can fit them into your room. And I've seen pictures of them walking up and over cliffs and down. And it's a one-person pilot thing. They don't have it for...
Whereas Metal Gear Rex's head is bigger than your house. So, probably...
Size thing, we're at this issue again.
Right, and the Pacific Rim ones, from what I remember, were the biggest.
They are the largest.
That I've seen. If you're not counting those galaxy-sized Gurren Lagann mechs,
gosh.
Can we... All right.
Magic.
Magic, yes, that's just magic. So, the next big problem, like, if you walked up to somebody on the street and say, give me one reason why giant robots will never exist, they're going to tell you probably one thing first. What is that?
The weight?
The weight. They're so big, they're so heavy, they'll just collapse under themselves. And a lot of that has to do with scaling and the energy and the force, like we mentioned before, but it's also the materials that go into it. I'm going to go back, and I'm going to keep going back to this article. I'm going to read a little bit here just about the scale of these things. So, quote, say, for example, that you wanted to build a robot that is 10 times the height of an average human while maintaining human proportions. You also want to make this robot capable of jumping at a height equivalent to the distance between its knees and the ground. And I'm going to come back to this in a sec. I just wanted to jump in and say, basically, that's like normal human strength, right? Mm-hmm. Of what we can do. Most people can jump at least to their knees height, okay? So keep that in mind. It's trying to retain its own ability, okay? Let's go back in. Quote, the distance between knees and ground is also 10 times bigger for that robot than it is for the human. So you have to move 1,000 times the weight 10 times as far, which equals 10,000 times the energy requirement. So I wanted to bring that up because basically, first of all, let's forget about the fact that these are probably really heavy metals and materials, like I mentioned. The scaling alone is going to make this nearly impossible for it to even have that kind of strength. That's an incredible amount of energy it's going to need, which is why we were mentioning you're going to need different motors in different joints, and just to try and get it to move. And I believe there's a bit in here where it even mentions, even if we built something like the Jaeger, I think it's called in Pacific Rim, if we built something like that and we actually had that sucker fully charged and ready to go with our best battery and energy, it would probably be able to move about 3 to 10 steps before it's just completely drained. Walking.
And that's just our battery technology at this point.
That's our battery.
We are not up to snuff with that.
On an intergalactic basis, other races are looking at us and laughing that we have not figured out this really obvious, I don't know,
and I think,
way to access energy from our host star or something.
I believe in Pacific Rim that they use the most toxic way to power their giant mechs, which is nuclear fission.
Ooh, right. Should we just jump to energy then while we're on it? Oh, because that is so dangerous.
Right. And my big thing is we gotta use motors everywhere in this mech if we're making it move. Or, like, again, we're using the muscle, but then we gotta use the motor to produce the electric to get the muscle to move.
We basically need some new form of energy in order to get these to operate, just because we need such a tremendous amount of it. Now, that could be some sort of source that is able... I mean, I'm going to take things from multiple DU Physics episodes we've spoken about. So, like, teleporting photons or teleporting anything into the system somehow to gain energy by stealing it from some other source, which could be a star. Mm-hmm. Maybe you'd be able to retain... Like, maybe if in the core of it you had, like, maybe even wormholes take a tremendous amount of energy, but even if you held it open in a star and you used that as fuel...
Maybe the idea is to teleport the energy from an area location to there to help produce more energy from that other location.
Here's the problem with that little rant I just got, but yes, you got me correctly. You would need a net gain for that to be worth it. Right? So the teleport has to come from, like, a star or something with a tremendous amount of energy. And then you gotta know what to do with it when it gets there. And then the energy to even open a wormhole is so incredible that I feel like you would actually just be draining the star and eventually dooming the entire planet just from trying to trust me, no, it's not worth it.
It's worth it.
No, it's
worth it.
It's not worth it.
It's giant mechs, Alex. I need these.
But yeah, basically, yeah, what it says here, it wouldn't be able to move, even with our conventional fuel sources. With vastly improved efficiency, we would not be able to move a Pacific Rim-sized robot more than a few steps per tank load. And it's walking. That's the thing. These things are jumping,
fossil
they're
fuels
punching.
now. Wait for this.
Oh, they're not using fossil fuels. Like, that's so inefficient compared to other... No.
I know. We're already trying to best to move away from fossil fuels, but at this point...
Oh, it's not even just that. It's the efficiency of it. And you'd be gunking up the system. You'd be ruining it. I mean... Fossil fuels only work because they're really, really old bioforms, right? And there's, for one, I know, the big controversy is there's a limited amount of those. And, oh man, you want to talk about your Hummer being a gas guzzler? Look at my Jaeger.
Look at my Jaeger.
This guy, he gets...
Pulling up to the gas station.
I get 2 inches to the gallon. I mean, it's... Even that would be impressive.
Why would you even measure it in gallons at that point? Your tank's gonna be so large.
Right, I get 1 mile to the ocean. Is that better?
Yeah, that sounds a little bit better.
It's impossible. But yeah, I mean, like they're saying here, the portable fission reactors are used to power aircraft carriers, but they would need to be miniaturized and power density significantly improved to even have these robots just walk.
Just walk. We're not talking about punching people, firing guns.
Right. Maybe because they're so big, you don't see the power cables hooking them up to a mother grid somewhere else. That is just drained. I don't know.
Yeah, even that, you said you still have to create like some kind of a net gain with that, and that sounds nearly impossible.
You need a net gain,
even if you're doing it wirelessly or with a cord charging it.
Right. I mean, like, you think say you want to watch, I don't know, a 4K video for whatever reason, something really straining on your cell phone, okay? So you're making it work really hard, so think, like, we got the giant robot working really hard. Wouldn't you just plug it in?
Right.
So, I mean, that's one, yeah.
But...
Depends on what they're doing. Okay, so if you're in space, you need to be tethered anyway. I'm sorry, Gundam fans, you can't just move around and just fly in space.
And then you re-enter the atmosphere perfectly fine and also go into the ocean.
That's just another thing. But if you're in space, you need to be tethered somehow. I'm sorry, you're in a vacuum. You're not flying around. You're not... I don't care what your thrusters think you're doing.
Thrusters in your
no,
wings.
the thrusters aren't gonna do anything. No. It won't happen. I mean, you could basically set up, like, light sails so that you would start moving in a couple years. I'm sorry.
Off topic.
No, it's not going to happen. So, yeah, the energy required is insane. But another thing we mentioned was the weight. And if we kind of keep dancing around this one, the weight is a big problem because of the materials you need to build it. We kind of touched on that earlier, like, is it a biomechanical thing, or is it more like a Metal Gear Rex? It is just giant pieces of metal.
See, I think a combination of biomechanical... And the big part about it is, do you know how much weight we would save if we just take out that pilot?
Not enough.
No, because then you don't need all of that to actually protect the pilot that's inside of there.
It depends on what the robot's for.
Exactly.
I mean, we're assuming...
It helps remove some.
Back up. What are all of these robots for? They're for fighting other giant robots. So if they're fighting other giant robots, they're going to be safe, right? They have to be armor plated, so you might as well put a person inside, but who cares?
Okay.
That weight is so insignificant. That is like the fly on the elephant's butt.
But you gotta take out some weight somewhere. One, you gotta take off the head. Just take that head off. You don't need it.
Depends.
You don't need your head. Just, go.
The head... I am assuming, because of, you say if you cut it off, it severs their systems to see. We're talking Gundam.
In Gundam.
If that's the case, then that is where it's honing it, or keeping all of its perceptual sensory systems. So it's cameras, right? Which, if you're going to put it anywhere, where would you put it? You would put it on the top, right? So that the limbs aren't getting in the way, so you can see in 360 degrees and relay that to the pilot. That makes sense. You should put that there. I mean, yes, the human form is stupid. No, I'm not counteracting myself here. But yes, that's wure you would put it, right? Now, if we're talking something like Metal Gear Rex's head, no, that's totally unfeasible, and that needs to go. If we're looking at there's so many things about how he's built now.
He's got so many guns on his head.
Missiles and, lasers, and it's just a giant death machine.
Play Metal Gear 4 and fight a robot with a robot in there.
Oh my gosh,
it's fantastic.
It feels so good. But at the same time, I do it and I'm like, I know it won't happen, so I need to soak every second of this in.
So how about we talk about things that have actually feasibly happened? I mean, have we gone
materials? Can we cover materials before
I thought you were done with... There isn't much to say, as they weigh a lot, and...
Well, no, I mean, there's actual materials that we're looking into that could be strong enough to support that kind of weight, because, like, when we were talking about in the Giant Monsters episode, of course people say, like, you can't have something that's Godzilla-sized walking on land, because... the weight of its muscle would crush the bone, and if it's standing up, it's just going to collapse into a pitiful pile of jelly. And the same thing's going to happen to a giant robot if that metal is not... I say metal, but it could be anything. If it's not dense enough and sturdy enough to withstand all of the weight above and be able to move around and perform its function properly without collapsing and retaining weight. Energy. So, there's several materials we were looking at. Some were very dangerous.
Mostly dangerous.
Mostly. I'm going to read a little bit about this one here. It's another quote from space.com. Same article. Quote, beryllium is the best choice in theory, said, oh my goodness, Jekathon Thangelvantham. I think I did that right.
No.
A robotics postdoctoral associate at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Man, I'm sorry if I goofed your name. I'm sure I did. But he added that the metal's toxicity, it's corrosive to human skin, and in dust form can be lethal when inhaled, could pose a problem. Titanium is another alternative, as is carbon-reinforced plastic. But the problem is, I mean, clearly, as we just mentioned, some of the best options will kill humans just from being near them. Which, I mean, if you wanted a computer to pilot it, and you just wanted to send this giant death machine robot into, like, why does the human need to be there? Why isn't it wireless? I mean, we have this technology, so why aren't they piloting it from somewhere else? And
that's
then you're
the big thing about a lot of the giant
you go into
mechs.
your enemy base and you punch everything, and you
stupid to have a
rip all
human
the wires
pilot
out
in the cockpit of the robot. It's just illogical to have a physical person. The only thing
we also have bombs, so I don't really see the point in building a giant robot. It's going to cost you so much more when we have a bomb.
The only thing that people were saying that was maybe beneficial to having a pilot there is that there's more dexterity and less lag and things like that. So
well, here,
versatility would be a little better. So
once again, if you have a cable moving to it, a fiber cable that is also giving it information as well as the power cable, because once again, I'm seeing no reason why you shouldn't have a cable.
How does this beryllium act towards, like, that kind of material? Then?
It's just hazardous to humans, from what I understand. Okay. Yeah, it's corrosive to our skin and can kill us if we breathe it. So, nice, yay!
Oh, it's our self-destruct feature. We sitting in our little wireless robot.
Well, that's what I'm like. We sent this thing here, and if it doesn't destroy and do its damage over there, and they stop it and they blow it up or something, they just vaporized it and killed themselves, because it as a vapor will become another kind of weapon. So maybe, I mean, it's super cruel, but anyway.
I mean, is that going back to, what kind of warfare is that? Were you using chemical warfare?
Yeah,
is that what we're going back to with this?
Yeah.
I thought we moved away from chemical warfare. All things possible.
Yeah, you're awful. Awful kind of things that were happening. World War I, disgusting.
Yes, yes.
Disgusting stuff. I'm not even going to get into blaming countries because it could be dangerous. But yes, it was very, very awful chemical warfare. And putting that into a giant robot is just, it would happen. Mm-hmm. And I know which country would do it first. So let's just move on. And actually, it might even be the United States. Like, we are not above that.
No.
But no, I was thinking of several others. But so aside from all of those problems... what else were we looking at?
those were really our big issues. I didn't want to dive too deep into it. Otherwise, we're going to be here for 4 hours instead of 1 hour.
So how about we jump into the big thing that you guys are waiting for? What was the real thing that Kim found?
We're so close!
What did you find that was real?
Okay. I'm going to start back with other things that were real and then get to present day what is happening.
Okay.
So, in 2004...
Yeah.
So, wow, that's a long time ago now.
That is a long time ago.
In 2004, the T-52 Inryu is of course, Japanese machine. And it's essentially just used for moving wreckage and getting things out of the way. This is like a 10-foot tall robot.
Is that really the most... So it's basically a giant forklift?
Yeah, so let's see. It weighs 5 tons, stands 10 feet tall. It's also called the Hyper Rescue Robot.
Of course it is.
Because the main mech's
Hyper Rescue Robot!
primary purpose is to clear wreckage after earthquakes and disasters. You know, lifting cars, moving cars, and I don't believe it has a pilot.
It needs to be piloted by either a samurai or an emotionally unstable teenager.
Well, I think it's
we actually didn't go back to mention that about at the very beginning.
We got with it with the telepathic.
No, but it's like a joke I always say with Gundam. To pilot it, you need to find an emotionally unstable teenager. That's just who they pick for piloting these things. So, yeah, the telepathic is one thing of, like, understanding you need to be able to somehow wirelessly communicate with this thing. Psychopathic, because, yes, you're basically going to be crazy and you need to just beat the crap out of things wirelessly. Whatever. And, emotionally unstable teenager, because that's just what happens in Gundam.
Anyway,
sure.
I don't believe that this Gundam. I don't believe that the.
I'm sure they wanted to call it a Gundam.
I don't believe that
that Freudian slip has happened.
The T-50 in Ryu, I do not believe is piloted by a human in there. I believe it is a remotely controlled robot.
Did you find more?
So we also have the one that I thought was the most exciting called the Beetle.
Nice. Just jump to the fun stuff.
So this is the one that was created in 1958 to 1962. So it did not last long.
Oh. Tell me the story.
So the Beetle was created by GE, the General Electric, for all of you not in America. I don't know. Is GE nation worldwide? I don't know.
They'll probably outsource to other countries. Who cares?
It weighed 170,000 pounds.
Wow.
It can punch its claw hands through concrete wall or gently stretch stainless steel arms to pluck an egg off the top of the roof of a house. So it has both types of arms.
Wait, and that's very very well made.
Very good dexterity. But it also has a lot of strength if needed. But that has 2 separate arms on it. So it has I think it has 4 arms total on the thing. It was mainly used in nuclear research. And this Beetle...
You said he?
Okay. It was designed to build an atomic airplane.
Okay.
Which never happened. They just couldn't get it to work.
Oh, so they built this robot to build something bigger, and he couldn't build it?
Right.
And so they just decommissioned it. Is that what happened? Oh, that's awful.
Well, after a while, it started breaking down.
Oh.
It's, gaskets broke, things...
How old is this again?
1958.
Oh my gosh, come on. We can do better than that.
So,
Tell me we can't do this now.
I just remember reading one part where something burst and the engineer stuck his finger in the hole to try and fix it.
Oh no, then what happened?
There are little glitchy issues with the larger things, had smaller issues inside of each of it, like each of the circuits had smaller issues inside of that issue, and it was piloted by a human inside of it. So it was mainly worked with nuclear research, so they had to heavily armor it so that way a human could get inside of it to make it more versatile and be more precise with what it needed to do in the machine. So in the end, they just came to the conclusion it's easier to strip all of that stuff off that you don't need for radiation protection and make a remote controlled version.
But we built it 60-some years ago?
Yeah, which I thought was really impressive.
You realize what we can build now then?
I know.
We basically just went through this whole video I was trying to basically say, ain't no way in heck this thing's gonna happen. But you tell me that happened 60 years ago? Mm-hmm. Yeah, never mind.
I mean, it was only made for the specific purpose of
it doesn't matter if that thing could pick an egg up off of a house and not crush it.
It's a really fascinating thing. Go look up photos of it.
What's it called? The beetle?
The beetle.
The beetle. That's crazy. That's crazy. Is there anything else that we have before?
Then what we are getting close to.
Okay.
Okay. So this was in the article, the 2016 article. So we are actually doing this now.
Sure.
Where Japan has made the assist suits.
Oh no! Go ahead. Come on.
So the assist suits, from what I could see, was something that kind of attached around you like a back brace or something like that, and allowed you to lift up heavier objects to help support with shortage in labor over in Japan.
Okay.
So, I didn't look too much into the research of it, but it helps you lift more to not put strain on your own muscles. So
when building a robot extension of a human is cheaper than hiring another human, you got problems.
Right, and the big thing was when I was reading the article that they were to the point of trying to make this more mass-produced. So they are to that point now, and I think you can actually like buy one on Amazon if you wanted to.
That'd be awesome. I could make like an installation service where I go to someone's house, just like a refrigerator on one arm, and I'm like, ding dong, open their door, I'm like, hey, you guys order a refrigerator? And they're like, no. I'm like, oh. Never mind. I'll just go next door.
He just wanted to show off him.
I'm sorry, I was just carrying it. Oh, I'm sorry. Is this your car? You're not allowed to park here.
I think it's called like the AWN assist suit. I don't know. It's
Japanese
very
assist suit.
small.
I'm sure we'll find it.
It's that's the nice thing. It's very small and compact. It's not like these things we see like an Alien where you have this giant construction suit.
Yeah, those
It's a small one that can help enhance your body that you can take anywhere and allow you to lift things. But yeah, like you said, it's cheaper to buy one of these than hire another worker.
Yeah. You know what's... because I'm thinking, like, are you telling me that thing's cheaper than a plane ticket? For somebody in a country desperate for work, you just, like, bring them there. I mean, is it really that much? Is it that hard? But I'm sure there was someone up in the Japanese executive branch like, oh, yes, definitely cheaper. Yes, much cheaper. Must have giant robot arm for people. And they were like, are you sure about this?
But that's why I think that we're so close, because all of this technology...
Because Japan's doing it.
Because all of this technology we've talked about trying to get back at each other during this whole podcast is what they're actually using to try to strengthen the human body's muscles to be able to lift more.
They're using us as the bridge to build bigger ones. Well, until I see them the size of the beetle and up, I'm still going to be skeptical.
Yeah, the beetle was more similar to like a tank, I feel like, because it ran on treads.
But can we still say we will never have anything like Gundams free-floating in the ocean or in the desert and then lifting off into space?
Why are you crushing my dream?
Because I have to have some victory today. Because so far, you've basically disproven everything I've said. Is there anything else we need to talk about giant mechs?
No, but I mean, we could also, if we ever wanted to, get into the combining of giant mechs, and then the force needed to do that.
Yeah, we didn't even bother with that because it's just silly. It's just
I want
silly.
you to just go on the internet, type in Megazord battle fight, and just... I want you to see what a Zord is.
Oh, right. I've seen, like, what, no, actually, I think I know what you're talking about now. It's kind of Voltron-y.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but,
yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I'm gonna know that one. I'm gonna nope right out of there. So anyway, that is all the time we have today. Thank you so much for tuning in, and be sure to join us next time for some more game science. Be sure to follow us either on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, and we will see you all in the next episode of Do You Physics.
Bye-bye.